When you started your gym, part of the motivation was creating freedom. But you may soon have a good problem. You have more freedom. And now you're not always sure how to use your time effectively. Well, lucky for you, in this video, I'm gonna cover the 2 key roles of a gym owner. My name is Mark Fisher from businessforunicorns.com, and if you like seeing me say words, well, you might like just listening to me say words. Go to beforyoupodcast.com or click the link in the description box to subscribe and follow the Business for Unicorns podcast. Now, if we're gonna cover the key roles of a gym owner, let's take a moment and unpack the things that you probably shouldn't be doing. So for most gym owners, this is gonna be things like administrivia, handling billing, very light customer service requests. Cleaning is a really big example of something that you really want to outsource as soon as you can. It's not super valuable. It's important, but it's something that's not that expensive to have someone else handle. Another thing to note, and this one is a little interesting and hard to get your arms around because the poison is in the dose. There are some things that you should do with some of your time, but if you do too much of, it'll become an issue. So an example here is something like continuing education. You should spend some of your time watching Mark Fisher, Human Being, on YouTube. You should spend some of your time reading the Business for Unicorns emails. But you only have so many hours in the week. So if you're doing that 3, 4, 9 hours per day, that's not gonna lead to good outcomes for your business because then you don't have time for the key roles. Another example of something that I wouldn't define as a key role of the business, but that you may decide based on your vision and how you want your life to go and how you want to have a relationship with your gym, but can get overloaded, is training. Now, here's the thing. If you love training, and that is a superpower of yours, there is a case to be made for keeping some hours of training on the floor. In my experience, the clients I work with that are really looking to create some freedom in their gym and maximize spending time things they love and making the most take-home income usually land between no more than 20 hours per week of training, which I think is kind of on the high side. And in some cases, they go all the way down to 0 if that's not the thing that they most want to be doing every day, all day long. But again, I want to make the case, I don't put that as a key role of the business because you don't strictly have to be the one to do that. But I'll say this, it could be a very valuable use of your time if it's something you're great at and something you love. Well, I've been leaving you hanging long enough. What are those 2 key roles? 1, drive revenue for the business with marketing, sales, and 2, grow and develop your team, or simply put, leadership. Here's the deal. At the end of the day, you are the small business owner. It's not fair to expect anybody else to take on primary responsibility for marketing and selling. Now, to the extent that you get very good at leadership, at growing and developing your team, you can certainly get people to help support you to fulfill even some of the functions. In some cases, even take ownership of them. And if we were to further split this up in 2 different buckets, we could probably split this up into marketing. What is the process that you get word out in the world about your business so that people know you exist in the first place? And what are the systems that allow you to develop the relationship over time so that prospects, leads come to know you, like you, and trust you, and then ultimately make the decision to hire you when you give them offers? The other piece of this is what I would call sales. So in my world, when I'm thinking about this as a framework, sales begins the moment a prospect moves from a suspect, someone following you from a distance and lurking, to a prospect, which is now someone that has raised their hand and give you a significant indicator of interest. Perhaps they have opted into the funnel for low barrier offer. And sales could probably be broken down into following up with the people after they've opted in and the skill of the actual sales conversation. And if you want to find out more about sales, well, now's as good as time as any to click on my video, 3 ways to improve gym sales. You can do that right after you hit the subscribe button. Now, the other key role of the gym owner is leadership. It's growing and developing your team, because even if you decide to stay on the floor a decent amount, even if you're on the higher side, the reality is if you really want a business that's making a big impact and creating some freedom and some really meaningful take-home income, you're gonna be limited by your own human energy hours. So we're gonna need to develop the skill of developing and holding accountable, training, and making the rest of your staff and your team more valuable at fulfilling whatever your standard operating procedures are at a very high level. You might be asking, is it possible for me to outsource the leadership of the team? If you really don't have a knack for leadership and you really don't like managing people, you might be able to have your GM or your sous chef do a lot of that on your behalf, but ultimately the buck is gonna stop with you. And in practice, part of why these are 2 key roles for gym owners is this. Until you get at least adequate at growing the business and working through other people to achieve the goals of the business, you're usually not making enough money and you usually don't have enough scale to actually outsource either of those. So in most cases, you're gonna need to develop aptitude at these two key roles. So in closing, if you find yourself having freedom, maybe you start to get off the floor, you're not training quite as much, be very careful of confusing activity with achievement, where you're answering lots of emails and you seem busy all day long, and gosh, you're spending a lot of time at work and you're even doing a lot of time on work-ish things. But the two key things you need to be thinking of, how you want to fill your schedule, are activities that are driving revenue through marketing, sales, and pouring love, care, and attention into your team so they feel supported and they become more valuable over time, and the overall quality of everything the business touches continues to improve day after day. All right, my friends, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have not yet subscribed, that is a great thing to do, because then you won't miss any of these videos, which we put up at least twice per week. And if you've not already done so, I recommend head over to businessforunicorns.com and you can find out more about how we help gym owners just like you create more income, more impact, and more personal freedom. I'll see you soon for another video where I will offer you more actionable tips, psychological frameworks, and philosophy.